So first things first, a high-level overview of what a Cyber Fusion Center is. It is essentially a suite of tools that spans across two different categories. The end result being Cyber Fusion allows you to aggregate all of your data points together in order to add context to any of your investigations. But those two categories that allow for this to happen are SOAR and threat intelligence. We sell four components across those two different categories. However, today I'm going to be focusing specifically on one of our threat intelligence tools, which we call Cyware Collaborate. Now, Cyware Collaborate is essentially an application that enables organizations to communicate, collaborate, and share your more human readable, think operational and strategic type threat intelligence amongst peers in your organization and amongst organizations in your network as well. So that being said, just jumping right into our interface here, I want to just kind of briefly acclimate us with the things that we're going to be looking at throughout the course of the demo. So as we can see right here on the interface, this is the Cyware Collaborate administration portal. There are two separate portals to Cyware Collaborate. Here in the administration portal is actually where we're going to be curating and creating the threat intelligence content that we'll be distributing over to our users in the Collaborate user portal, which you're now seeing right here on the screen. So all of that being said, I am going to go ahead and start with the creation side of things, right? What does it look like for my analyst to come in here and create content that I'm going to go and distribute over to my threat intel recipients? And then I'm going to talk a little bit about what it looks like to receive that information as a user, and not only receive it, but how can I then continue to communicate and collaborate back to my analysts in kind of a bi-directional manner, as opposed to just a one-way communication from analyst to user, right? Jumping right into the portal here, I think the core concept, right, the most important thing to understand about Cyware Collaborate is how we actually enable the communication and collaboration that you're going to see here in a little bit. So this is entirely based on a concept which we call recipient groups, right? So everybody who is in the same recipient groups, we can send that intelligence off to a recipient group, and that recipient group can contain only members of your organization, or it can contain members of your organization and maybe other organizations as well. The end result being, when I deliver that information, everybody will receive that piece of threat intelligence and immediately be able to communicate and collaborate on it. So just real quick, recipient groups are what enable all of this to happen over on the user side. So what it looks like to create one of these recipient groups, it's very simple. We'll first come into our core settings. Under recipient group, we simply press create. We can give that group a name, right? We give them a description. We can even specify exactly which TLP, right? What level of access control they're allowed to have to this information. And we can make the group invite only or public as well, right? So we can make it so that any user can join it, or you can only join this group if I extend an invite to you as the administrator, right? And then, underneath this, important as well, right? We can actually dictate all of the different features that our users will have access to over in the user portal, right? So if I don't know, perhaps I'm in leadership, I don't necessarily need the ability to, say, deliver surveys, right? So I can turn that off. But, I do need access to the knowledge base. I need to be able to communicate with my peers via our instant messaging tool. And I want to be able to request information from my analysts. So I'll turn the request for info feature on, right? The idea here is you can customize the user experience based on the recipient groups that you have placed them into. Another concept that's big to understand for our Cyware Collaborate platform, just before I go into all the fun stuff, right, into the alert, into the content creation and all that good stuff. One very important concept to understand is the concept of Collaborate community sharing. So we do have the ability to almost think of it like inter-collaborate sharing amongst one another, right? So I can not only share to the users in my own instance, but I could also share off to other organizations that have their own Collaborate instance. And this can enable, again, sharing of that more operational and strategic type threat intelligence amongst different organizations who both have the Collaborate platform. And this is very easy to configure and set up as well. This is really the idea of enabling collective defense, right? Sharing your intelligence with others, so perhaps they can, avoid some kind of downfall that you may have encountered that you're writing your intel report on, or maybe they share their intel back with you so that you can look at it and you can implement any controls that might be required in a proactive manner. But this is very easy to set up. It's a simple exchange of API credentials between you and the other organization if you want to, right? You don't have to use this feature, but it is nice for community sharing, kind of collaboration, right? I can even set up rules that dictate how my alerts are shared automatically to those in my community, right? So I could say something along the lines of like, let's call this rule share TLP white, right? Anything that I'm delivering that's TLP white, this essentially means it's publicly available information, right? It's perhaps open source threat intelligence. I can go ahead and say, if it is TLP white, if any alert whatsoever streams into my system that's TLP white. And here's where I actually set those conditions here, right? So I can say, even take it a step further, right? If the alert is let's say a vulnerability advisory and TLP clear, we have TLP 2.0 on in this case, but if it is TLP clear, then automatically share out to, this specific community, right? And in this case, it's CISA, CISOs. Again, it can be any community. Maybe it's an organization that you partner with. Maybe it's an ISAC, right? So this is the idea of community sharing that the Cyware Collaborate platform can enable. So now that we understand the concept around which Collaborate is built, what it does, and how it can communicate with entities, in your own communities to share intel, let's dive into exactly what it looks like to create a piece of threat intelligence that I want to share out to either my organization or an organization in my community, right? We have many different ways that we can do this, but at the top right, we'll see a create button. I'm going to press that. And we can either create a brand new alert. We call them alerts in Cyware Collaborate. We can create a brand new alert from scratch, or we can create one from a template, right? We can manage any number of templates that we would like for this information. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm just going to show what it might look like to create an alert from a template, right? And if we see here, I do have a number of different templates that would be available to me. And, one of them is, for example, a vulnerability template. So I'll just click into that. I'll press create alert. And as we can see immediately, much of the information has already been filled out for me, right? This takes some of the stress off my analysts from having to kind of format their reports or fill in certain fields that should be the same every single time across every single report, right? So we can see we have a title here. We have our summary. We can go ahead. We can add links into this. We can add images, code snippets, right? Code views, headers, footers. We can make this report look and feel exactly as we need to. And beyond that, once our report is created, we can also put it into a category. This is nice in terms of allowing our users to kind of gain an immediate understanding. What is this report about, right? We can allow them to create their own saved filters based on categories of particular interest, right? So if I'm a vulnerability management team, maybe I'm a user of Collaborate, I'm a receiver of this intel, and what I care about is vulnerability advisories, right? So we can absolutely do all of that. We can put a TLP on the alert to make sure that only the intended entities are actually allowed to come in and view this if they have access to this level TLP of information. Finally, we can add in our own branding or whatever kind of image we might want to on this report as well. Finally, we do have our additional tabs too. And in our additional tabs, this is an example of the threat intel category, right, from the required section. But in our additional tabs, we can actually completely customize this. We can add any kind of fields that we might want to track per alert, right? So, and that's based on the category as well. So in the threat intel category, we're tracking, linked alerts, inventory assessments, a date, targeted sectors, a specific PIR. But again, we can make this look and feel as you would like. You don't have to track anything that I just told you about. You can create your own custom fields and get those into the additional tab as well. And next, we do have our indicators tab. So we can bring along any indicators on the reports, and this section will parse them out for you and make them available as an attachment to the threat intelligence recipient, right? So imagine I am maybe sending out a report about some malicious IPs that are targeting my organization, and maybe the recipient is my firewall team. I could say, go ahead and attach a CSV to this report, right? The indicators targeting us are these. I'll parse those out, and Collaborate told me right off the bat that it did parse out 3 different IP addresses. One is actually on our allowed list, so we know that this is a good indicator, and the recipient of this intel will receive that information as well. And 2, we know are bad, right? So they'll be able to immediately see that along with the attached CSV, XML, or JSON if they need it, and they can go and take whatever action they need to based on these indicators. Then we do have our recipients as well. So this is a huge, massively important part of Collaborate, right? Making sure that only the desired entities actually receive the intelligence that we're sending out, right? We don't want anybody who is an unintended recipient receiving potentially sensitive information. So what we can do here is we can leverage those recipient groups that we just discussed a little bit ago, right? So we have many built into the system already. These are all just for demo purposes. But I can go ahead and, I don't know if we have, I can send this to, members of critical infrastructure. Maybe we've got some kind of vulnerability group, incident response group, et cetera. Whoever you might want to be the recipients of this information, we can put them all there. And we can also select individual recipients too. So if I were to put my own name in, for example, I can say only this recipient is supposed to receive this intel. Don't send it to anybody else. Although in this case, obviously, the recipient groups that we mentioned here would receive it. But then we can apply additional filtering too, based on the country, right? Based on the region. So we can essentially say, of everybody I've specified so far, only send it to the people in the United States and in this particular state and in this particular city, right? So we can get very granular with exactly who is receiving this kind of information. This is great for organizations that are very spread apart, multinational organizations who have threats that are specific to a particular area or a particular region. And then I also want to mention too, just because we're at the bottom of this form, we are mobile enabled. So anytime we send out an alert, my user can just as easily open up the Collaborate app on their phone and immediately be able to read out the information that I had sent to them. So we can send these over mobile. We can send this information over email as well. Multiple different ways to actually deliver this information. Next is attachments. This one's pretty straightforward, right? We can go ahead and we can, if there's maybe a PDF that adds additional contextual information to the intel that I'm sending off, throw it on as an attachment, right? If there is a CSV file that you have that's helpful in the sense, in regards for the information you've just sent, go ahead and attach it, and your recipient will receive that attachment as well. Intelligence requirements. This is something that we can actually track as a separate feature, and I'm going to show more in depth at the end of this demo. But just know that we are capable of tracking intelligence requirements. We can actually take all of these alerts that we're creating, whether we created them or they were sent to us by a partner, and we can attach these alerts to the intel requirements that we're tracking, right? So think like this is a vulnerability, right? So let's attach this to information on vulnerability exploitation, which I'll show in a little bit, but this is, this could be an Intel requirement for my organization or for my role. Threat assessments, think about adding a survey onto the report, right? So I can say, in this case, maybe we have Log4j. This could be something as simple as, are your company assets affected by Log4j vulnerability? And we'll see what this looks like here in a minute when it's received by a user, but it's essentially just a questionnaire that pops up on the top of the alert where they can simply say yes, or they can say no, or we can even give them more options than just two, right? Or we could even make it a text box, right? So think about, I, as an Intel analyst or a SOC member, am creating an alert, sending it out to vulnerability or some kind of asset management team and saying, hey, here's all the information about the impacted product. Is our product on this specific version? They can say yes or no, and I can receive that information as the person who created the intelligence, right? Recommended actions, going right off that last example, I can also apply actions that I would recommend the recipients of this intel to take, right? So if I do have a vulnerable product, I can say, my recommended actions are to patch this device, and we'll give it a more granular description too. I could even say, patch this device to the latest version, which is 4.5.10, right? And from that point, I can even go on and control even further which recipient group actually receives the recommended action, right? So just more granularity in terms of access control and who gets what pieces of information. Threat Defender library, we can attach any kind of YARA rules, any kind of SIM rules, hunting and detection rules, IR automation playbooks directly onto the alert as well. This is great. Think about me being perhaps a new analyst or someone that just sees this intelligence and doesn't know where to start, quite frankly. It can be a lot of information to ingest all at one time. Imagine if I could just push a SIM rule to them that says, here is a Splunk rule. Take this, drop it into Splunk, and see if anything pops up, right? So that is essentially this type of capability, and we'll see what this looks like here in a second when it's received as well. But I can add my YARA rules, SIM rules, IR playbooks, etc., directly onto my alert. And finally, when it's all said and done, I can go ahead and put my finishing touches on this alert. I can add tagging, right? Again, I can determine which communities I should share this alert out to. I can add conference dialing information. I could post the alert to other applications. So we integrate with tools like Slack, tools like Teams, right? So that you maybe don't have to log on directly to the portal. Maybe you could just log on to a Teams channel where this information is sent, and you can view it there, right? We do integrate with our own threat intelligence platform too, which is very nice. So we can take this report information and all the indicators and send it to our tip for your more technical and tactical type of analysis. But those are kind of the key points to alert creation. And when it's all said and done and we're ready to publish our alerts to our user base, more specifically, these recipient groups that we have determined here, we can press the publish button, send that information off. Now, once that's sent off, our users will log into the platform, and here is an example of what they might see, right? So here is an alert that has been distributed by my analysts. To the left, you'll see all the different alerts that this particular analyst has been sent, right? So in this case, we can see that alert category, right? Vulnerability advisories. What TLP is this piece of information? We can see the title as well. And just sticking to the one at the very top, we can see that this in particular was a MOVEit transfer, an alert about a MOVEit transfer critical vulnerability. Scrolling down, we can see all of the relevant information that we added for the alert in that initial summary section, right? There's plenty of information on this alert here that we can read. We can see those threat indicators that we added, right? In this case, it's just a few SHA-256 hashes. And here we can also see that we've added some footer information and some related alerts as well. Now, at the very top, we can also see that threat assessment survey that we've added, right? So this is a pretty simple one, just based on the attached Yara rules. Are you seeing suspicious activity? Now, me as the recipient of this alert, I can choose to respond to this and I can say, yes, I put that Yara rule into my security tools and I did get some hits. I am seeing, this vulnerability being exploited in one way or another in my system. And then our security team that sent this off could see that and respond appropriately. Now, to the right, we can see various pieces of metadata regarding the specific alert. Some of those items that we set up while we were sending it off, right? So first off, that recommended action, right? I can just click into, if I'm a recipient of this intel, click into that recommended action, and I can see, okay, we need to patch the MOVEit application to the latest version on all endpoints. I can create this as an action and then go ahead and assign it to any member of my team with an associated due date as well. On their desktop app or on their mobile app, they'll now get a notification that says, hey, you have an action that you need to take care of on this specific intelligence alert. And moving down the line, again, we have a tool called our Threat Defender Library, where we can not only send those Yara rules that I just showed you, those SIM rules, those IR automation playbooks, but we actually have an entire repository where you can look at those, create new ones, maintain them, and share them out to the recipient groups that you belong to. And if I'm an IR analyst and I receive this alert, I can go into my Threat Defender library, and here are those Yara rules that were sent along with the alert. Maybe I go ahead and I share this off to my network security team to plug into their tools and see if they can spot, any detections based on this rule, right? And again, you will see we have many different kind of rules shared with us in this environment. These are mostly just open source, Yara rules, Sigma rules. But if you look at the very left, we can see many of the different types of hunting and detection and automation rules that we can integrate into Threat Defender Library. But just wanted to do a quick overview, just so you know, this is a feature that we have entirely separate to maintain and share these rules with your community and with your groups. But yeah, coming down here, we can see all of the additional metadata too, right? Those attachments, the conference call information, of course, tagging information as well. Very important when you're dealing with anything threat intelligence, right? We need to be able to filter and search and create, known channels based on these tags, all of which we can, of course, do here when we're adding filters and looking for this information, again, by TLP, by category, by tags, or by any other field that we may have added to the alert that can be searched by. Finally, the feedback loop. Feedback loops, very important in threat intelligence. Our analysts want to know if they hit the mark on the content that they're sending out. They need to know so that they can improve it for next time, or maybe send you something that might be a little bit more relevant. So I, as the recipient, can rank this intelligence on a scale of 1 to 5 for relevancy and for content. And in addition to that, I can also press this contact analyst button directly to reach back out to my analysts and give them a comment. Maybe this is, 5 relevancy, 5 contents, and, you nailed it. This was perfect, exactly what I needed. Or maybe here's what you can improve on next time. Wasn't super relevant for me. Why did I get this, right? So kind of enabling that feedback loop. One of the last things that I want to finish off kind of our user interface with is our instant messenger ability. Again, this is that ability to communicate and collaborate with peers in your organization, as well as organizations in your network, right? All based on the recipient groups I belong to. I can very easily, at the bottom right, just press this plus start button. And I can see that, the group that got this alert was, one of the groups that got this alert, I should say, was security analysts, which just so happens to be a group that I belong to. So I want to open up an instant messenger with the security analyst group regarding this specific alert. And from here, I can say, what is everybody doing to remediates, question mark. And we can all go back and forth with steps that we're taking for analysis, for investigation, for action, reporting, right? Really just creating that bridge of communication between peers in my own organization and others as well. I've discussed the concept of an analyst sending information to their recipient base, which is obviously very important. But the whole point of Cyware Collaborate is to allow communication and collaboration between not only your users, but also to your users back to the analysts, right? So we have many different ways, as I kind of alluded to at the beginning of our overview, by which we can allow for this bidirectional communication. But one of them is a user reporting tool, right? In our user reporting tool, we can actually allow for the recipients of this threat intelligence, I should say, to submit intelligence back to my analysts actually creating this content, right? So imagine a scenario where we're creating that bidirectional loop of intel flowing to users and potentially from users back to analysts. I can also use this to do something like an incident submission, right? If I'm a user, I could submit an incident over to my security team, to my SOC team, or to my intel team that would be in charge of actually doing something about it, right? I could report that incident to other stakeholders within my organization as well automatically. So imagine if I am, imagine if I'm reporting an incident, and sure, I definitely want my security team to know, but maybe my leadership needs to know as well. I can go ahead and I can add the leadership response or recipient group onto this and make sure that all of the stakeholders for this particular event or incident or piece of intelligence are involved every step along the way and able to communicate and collaborate on whatever may be happening at that point in time. And once again, just like the analyst creation process, for the users, all of these forms are customizable. So I can completely dictate from the administration side which of these fields my users get to see when they are submitting a piece of intel or when they're submitting an incident into my Cyware Collaborate administration portal. And when that's all said and done, I can go ahead, I submit that incident, and my administrators would get it. They can review it, approve it, perhaps redistribute, right, as they so please. Another really, really great tool for communication and collaboration, especially amongst like the leadership groups, right, that are very often, opening the news and they see, there's this new big strain of malware and it's impacting this specific application. And, maybe they look at it and they say, oh, wow, well, I know that we run that application. So, I want to contact my security team immediately. And I want to understand if we have exposure to this. I want to understand what our risk is right now. And typically today, this is done by, an email or a phone call, something that's very, the probability that it'll get caught up in the weeds or dropped or accidentally lost at some point is very high. Let's just put it that way, right? But with our request for information feature, if I'm somebody from leadership, I can come into the portal, I can press request for information. I can request the info that I need from my security team, right? So, tell me about CVE 2023-22113. And then I'll say this in the description, right? I'll say the same thing. I need to understand our exposure. And TLP, I'll call this Amber Strict. If I'm leadership, I probably want to keep this, this RFI within a certain group, right? And recipient groups, if I want to go ahead and redistribute this RFI back out to anybody else, I can do that as well. All said and done, though, I can send this off, and my analysts will receive their RFI over on the admin portal. So switching gears into the admin portal just to show you kind of what it looks like to receive this communication from the other direction, right? We have an entirely separate request for information category where I can see at the very top from leadership, tell me about CVE 2023 22113. And I can comment back and forth with the submitter of the RFI. And when it's all said and done, I can go ahead and release this information as a final product, right? My final response to this request for information. And that is, right, kind of the main concept behind Cyware Collaborate, right? Sharing data back and forth between your users and your users back to you and out to other communities that you may belong to. We obviously have many other features as well that really enable the idea of communication and collaboration, right? We have, for example, a document repository where you can control the access to all of these documents, again, using those recipient groups. We have calendar functionality. We do have MITRE ATT&CK. We do have a MITRE ATT&CK Navigator tool where you can actually map all these different alerts to TTPs. So no shortage of other features, but right, the biggest idea, the biggest takeaway in terms of Cyware Collaborate is sharing information and allowing my users to communicate and collaborate. And that said, I did promise one more feature as well, which was the Intel requirements feature, which is definitely one of our more popular features, right? Anybody that is working in intelligence needs to essentially be able to validate what they're doing by relating their threat intelligence to an intelligence requirement, right? This is essentially a container of information that says, you know what, I have a requirement throughout the year to track all of the cyber threats to public transportation, right? I can go ahead and I can write my description. Here is what this Intel requirement is designed to track. And just like when I was creating that alert and I showed you that section where it says, choose your Intel requirement that you want to relate this to, these are the requirements, right? So when I relate this to a requirement, I can go ahead and it'll drop it in that category. I can press on any of these alerts that I have related to the cyber transportation requirement, and it will immediately take me to that specific alert. All right, so this is all great for, in addition to just containerizing this data to show where it fits into your requirements, it's also great for metric tracking as well, right? So at the very top, we can see various different metrics around our Intel requirements. And creating any Intel requirements, by the way, also a very easy process. At the top right, we just press Create IR, right? This can be general Intel requirements or PIR. Give it a TLP, give it a priority, a proper description, tagging information, documents from that document repository that I just showed. So again, this is definitely one of our more popular features. It's newer, it's picking up steam, and people are loving this right now. I hope you enjoyed our demonstration of the Cyware Threat Intel Exchange today. Just to briefly touch on, once again, everything that we covered today. We went over a quick demonstration of the Cyware Threat Intel Exchange interface, where we showed you in practice how we can aggregate all of your threat intelligence into this one single pane of glass, right? Whether it's sitting in an unstructured format or in some kind of structured format, right? We showed how we can use CTIX in order to automatically enrich that information and analyze it, and even build automation rules to go and take action on all that data so that your analysts can focus on the things that are more important in their day-to-day jobs, right? And then finally, we focused on how we can distribute that information over Styx Taxi to any of your partners, or any other organization that you might want to share your threat intelligence with, and allow them to share back with you. So all of that said, once again, I hope you enjoyed the demo. If you saw anything of interest, please feel free to reach out to Cyware directly on our website. And I enjoyed talking with you today. Thank you.